Welcome to the Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Westwood, and I'm here today with senior political correspondent David Drucker. And David, let's talk about the primaries. We're right in the middle of primary season. This past week, we saw primaries in Pennsylvania. What are your takeaways from, first, the Pennsylvania slate of races?
Well, it's a very interesting development in Pennsylvania where you have the candidate that former President Trump endorsed for governor winning that governor's race. He probably was going to win anyway, but President Trump certainly gave him a boost. The most interesting thing about Republican Mastriano is that he is really in sync with the president on issues of election integrity. He believes the election in 2020 was stolen. He has not been shy about saying so. And so here you're going to have a really good test in a swing state about how a sort of clone of President Trump does in a general election. Now, people might point to Ohio and say, well, J.D. Vance, the other Trump endorsee for Senate in Ohio, he won there, so aren't you going to have the same test? But I don't think it's the same because attitudinally, J.D. Vance is much more of a real committed populist. At least he appears to be so now, but doesn't always function in terms of his rhetoric and his abrasive style the way Trump does. But Mastriano is almost like a Trump clone. And a lot of Republicans in Pennsylvania are really worried that he's not going to beat Josh Shapiro, the Democratic nominee for governor, even though this election is shaping up as a potential Republican wave. So something to watch there. You know, the Senate race, we don't know what's going to happen. What we do know is that Trump's endorsement of Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz of television fame, put Oz in contention, and Oz may win, but this race may go to a recount. And the fact that Trump did not endorse Dave McCormick did not sink McCormick. So now you have these two candidates neck and neck as votes are being counted. So there is an outcome. We just don't know what it is yet. And whether Oz finishes on top when the votes are finally finished being counted or McCormick finishes on top, it looks like the margin of victory is going to be so slim that state law will require a recount. So the drama in Pennsylvania could play out for the foreseeable future.
What is the significance, in your eyes, of Congressman Ted Budd's victory in the Senate primary in North Carolina?
Well, I'm not sure whether Bud should thank Trump, whose endorsement clearly put him in the catbird seat, or the Club for Growth, who spent millions, and I mean in excess of $10 million, to rescue Budd's candidacy when it was on the ropes against former Governor Pat McCrory. Look, there's nothing wrong with Budd. He's a pretty conventional conservative, in his 40s, attractive, solid conservative voting record, would fit the Republican Party in North Carolina, and I think is in a position to win the general election without much problem. But his candidacy was in trouble. And as much as Trump's endorsement deserves credit for putting him in contention, I don't know that he would have done as well or even won without the incredible financial support from the Club for Growth, sort of the graybeard of conservative advocacy groups here in D.C. Because Trump endorses and Trump will tweet, well, not exactly tweet, but he'll send out statements or go on the new social media platform he owns, Truth Social, and say nice things. But he doesn't put a lot of money into these races. And granted, he will hold rallies, but there's just not a huge cash infusion. The advertising the Club for Growth paid for on behalf of Ted Budd was crucial, and this race might have looked differently without it.
And finally, how significant do you think this upcoming gubernatorial primary in Georgia will be, given that Donald Trump has backed David Perdue challenging incumbent Governor Brian Kemp, but it's not looking great for Perdue, is it?
Yeah, no, Kemp, is looking like he's going to win with an excess of 50% of the vote, which means he avoids runoff. And I think there is no other contest this primary season where Trump has staked so much of his personal credibility. He recruited David Perdue, the former senator who lost re-election in 2020, to run against Brian Kemp, the incumbent governor and Perdue's former political ally. He has made this race, Trump has, all about his complaints about the election being stolen in 2020, particularly in Georgia, where he insists he won by millions of votes, despite the lack of any proof that is true. And so if Kemp pulls this off the way public opinion polls suggest he's going to pull it off, and remember, in the final days of this campaign, who is Kemp bringing in? Former Vice President Mike Pence, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, Arizona Governor Doug Ducey, all people on Trump's hit list, people Trump doesn't like. If Kemp pulls this off in such a big way, then it's going to show that Trump's endorsement is only good for so much, and that his complaints about the 2020 election are not necessarily what is driving voters, Republican voters, even though Trump keeps insisting that that, in fact, is the most important issue.
Well, David, thank you so much for being here today. You can get more reporting from David and the rest of the political team at washingtonexaminer.com.